Hey everybody, welcome back. We are here just having finished our 40-day digital detox, and I'm sure the question a lot of people are processing is what's next? What do I do now? So I'm here with my friend Noah to kind of talk through that process. Noah, overall, how was the experience for you?
Man, challenging, but good. I think simply put, when you're doing something with a group of people, it kind of encourages you to stay in the game and, keep going. And I think having the weekly prayer and practice kind of helped me have little goalposts along the way, little checkpoints.
Yeah.
So that was awesome.
Same here.
Super helpful.
And, with that in mind, we had our final Sunday to encourage people with a specific prayer. What were we praying as we kind of transition from being within the 40 days to now re-entering quote unquote normal life and rhythms?
Yeah. And the hope is that we could kind of continue in these motions of some of these things that we've done. So that prayer was that God help us sustain a healthy rhythm of growing closer to you in holiness, right? And set apartness. And so that's the prayer, God, help us to continue to grow in these healthy rhythms and not just be done with this and move on to binging Netflix again. But what are some of the healthy things that we encountered? Lord, please help us keep these good rhythms.
Yeah. And if people remember back to the first week, we were looking at Romans 12, 1 through 2, and that was kind of an inspiration behind a lot of what we were doing and what we were praying. Noah, would you mind just one more time reading that for us from Romans 12?
Yeah. Romans 12, 1 and 2. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies as living sacrifice, holy, acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God.
Yeah. We see this desire to live a holy life, right? A life that is worship to God. And then something that we kind of repeated throughout this 40 days was, we want to be people who are not conformed to the world, but transformed by the renewing of our mind. And so we took that as an approach to how we could interact with our digital devices. And we had different practices throughout this 40 days to kind of build up what that might look like for us. And so we have one final practice to offer to our people. This is a bonus practice, but I think honestly, maybe the most important one of all. So what are we asking people to consider this time around?
Well, really, we want them to try to create a digital rule moving forward, like a digital practice or a digital approach or plan, I guess is the way to say it. And so, yes, you have the one right there.
Yep,
I've got mine right here.
Little pamphlet handout that we have available at church.
So we handed those out, and if you need one, let us know. We'll get you one. But it had an idea of the approach to say, let's go through some questions. Let's go through some ideas of how we can approach this moving forward in a healthy way. I like to think of with self-control, moving back into this.
Yeah, because just because the 40 days is over, right? It doesn't mean, like you said, that we want to, catch up on every season of the show we've missed out on binging. Instead, we want to think about how can we incorporate these good, healthy habits that helped us to grow in relationship with the people around us, helped us to be more present with God and with others. How do we take that and then just make it part of our normal rhythm? And so, like you said, coming up with a digital rule or some sort of framework that you and maybe your family, your community are going to live life through, it can be really helpful. So, funny enough, one of the things I did during the digital detox was wear this hat that I happen to be wearing now. If you're watching the video, you see
That's right.
But today is our first official day out of the 40 days, and I've already had multiple people, including my wife, who, when she saw me reach for the hat this morning, said, "Why are you wearing that hat? I thought that was your digital detox hat." And in a similar way to the way we're encouraging people now, I just found that over the course of 40 days of wearing this hat, that I like the hat.
It's a great hat.
That it's a good hat, and that I want to hold on to it for more than just 40 days, that I want to keep making it a part of my life. And so we want to look at maybe more serious, important ways that we can take our digital devices, our technology, and figure out what does this look like in the long haul. So we've got this little digital rule that is totally customizable, totally based off your station, your season of life. You get to fill in the blanks. It's not a set in stone thing. Everybody gets to decide for themselves where that line is and how they're going to do this. But we've got some recommendations there, and maybe some general principles that I think will be helpful, just like we did throughout the practice or the 40 days. So
yeah, and just I think the way I'm thinking about this is it's a good way to steward our time, to continue to steward our time, and to manage our life in a way that's like, you already said it, we've said it many times, but like, God, I want to be present with you and with the people that you put in my life. And so how can I refrain from some of these things in the digital sense, technology, and be more present, more with the people that you've put me in with and the place you placed me.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, there's something special about setting apart a 40-day, season to be really intentional. But just like we had our 40 days of prayer and fasting, that was a special time as well.
Yeah.
And hopefully people didn't say, now that I'm done with that 40 days of prayer and fasting, I'm just going to stop praying until next year. The goal or the hope there would be that we incorporate this closeness with God and this intimacy with God beyond just that 40 days. And so I know even with fasting, you and I have talked a little bit about how, you can come out of a fast in a good way and a bad way. And so, there's a temptation to maybe say, okay, the week-long fast is over. Let's all go to, the buffet. And
I know some people that did that.
That's one way to do it.
Even at our little fasting break party that we had, in here at the church, it was really cool. And we had some good soups and there was like salad and breadsticks. But a couple guys I know, they went hard on the breadsticks. And I think it hurt them a
probably
little bit.
With mixed results. I think I've done both versions of, exiting a fast where I remember one time after a week of prayer and fasting, getting to the end and just stopping at a drive-through on the way home and grabbing a bunch of tacos or whatever it was and just going crazy. And it hurt so bad. And it was not a good way to do it. And since then, I've really thought through, okay, what's my exit strategy? How am I going to do a slow
transition
re-entry?
Well.
And, referencing it as a detox, if you've just stepped back and rid your body of all sorts of, things that were unhealthy, the goal isn't to just then reintroduce all those unhealthy things back. You want to think through, what do I want to reincorporate and what can I maybe withhold? And so maybe we can look at some of these points here and talk about for us what we might do or what people might consider as they go through. The first one talks about social media. And so that was one of our first highlights was, hey, maybe consider don't doing social media during the 40 days. Now that we're out of that 40 days, what would you do there as I may or may not engage in social media for X amount of time during the week. So
maybe I'm biased, but social media doesn't have a lot of pros for me in life. I can't think of a lot of like healthy ways that it's benefited my life, I guess. There's some people that's how I can communicate with. And so I think I have one social media account still that is alive, I guess, that I occasionally look at. But people will ask me, they're like, "Oh, can I connect with you on Facebook or Instagram?" And I said, "Not really. Like, here's my number." So I try not to set up new relationships with social media being kind of the entry. So I think that's a way to slowly kind of adapt out of that lifestyle that I was more heavily in for sure at one point in life. But now I'm like, I don't really want to spend a ton of time there. I'm just as susceptible to the death scroll and just getting into the weeds with things I don't need to be in. So I just try to stay away from it in general as a principle for my own life.
I'm with you there. So. I know some people, it's a part of their life. It's part of their world, maybe their work as well. And I think, that can be fine. One thing we included on here is, these are the God honoring ways I'm going to use social media. And I think look at it through that reference point. Yeah. If you can say that the way you're using social media is, growing you closer to God and not pulling you away from him or, helping shape you into the person you want to be, that's great. If it's not though, maybe you don't need to add it back into your life. And especially, we did this as kind of a student ministry initiative and invited the church family. I think for students, young people especially, if I had one recommendation to keep doing something after the 40 days, it might be just keep them off social media if you can, if that's an option.
And some of the recommended readings, I think, would really heavily encourage that, especially with youth. It shows just stats with youth on social media. It's just being very detrimental in general. Yeah. And so it's hard to like encourage that for me.
Yeah. I think for me, it was early on in the 40 days, I had this picture or illustration come to me. And funny enough, it was probably because I wasn't engaging in the social media, so I had extra time to think and process, and I felt like it was something the Holy Spirit was showing me. But and I don't even know if this is technically accurate, but I've heard at different times in my life that the puffer fish, that it's small and expands, little spiky things, that it's a delicacy to eat.
Really?
But only
difficult.
the right people in the right way can prepare it.
Okay.
And so if you prepare it wrongly, you can poison whoever eats it. And so for me, that's social media, right?
Okay.
There may be some people with the temperament and skills and training to do it well, and to engage in it and help other people engage in it. But that's not me. I'm not trained in that way. I've found that it's not helpful for me, and that it just poisons me at the end of the day. And so I don't want to offer it to anybody, because I'll just poison them as well.
The depth and the quality that doesn't come from it, I guess, is how I'm going to say that. Because the depth I've found in less relationships, and the quality that I've found in face-to-face, real-life relationships are just so much richer. Yeah. And I remember the time of, I'm going to date myself, but back to MySpace, when it was like, collect as many friends as you can. Yeah. Similar to Facebook, right? Both of them, get as many friends as you can. I'm like, and as much as you want to stay in contact with all those people in some level, you really can't go deep. And I think God and Jesus modeled, hey, let's go deep with some people and build our intimate group that we spend time with and really confess and do life with, and a little bigger group of friends, and then maybe our community group and our church. It's like, that's maybe 150 people that I could like possibly say I know.
And I think there's some social science behind that too, that backs up some of that. And that's why maybe our baseline encouragement would be, if nothing else, just prioritize the in-person relationships and let everything else be a secondary thing. So let's keep going. Let's look at another
talk about that one for
topic.
A long time.
No, it's an important one, so it's good to go over. We also thought about moving forward, talking about stewarding our time. I will set a maximum amount of screen time per day, that whether that's for me or for my kids or all of us together. So we've got a little fill in the blank there for maximum minutes or hours of video games or TV for entertainment, news, that sort of purpose. And so that's something everybody has to decide for themselves. We weren't saying at the beginning of this that TV is bad, movies are bad, that you should stay off video games for the rest of your life.
I did watch 2 movies during the detox.
And that's okay, right? That was
But it was with people, and it was like this thing that brought us together. So
and I think, for me as a dad, I know my kids, all the older 3 at least, they love video games, and they'll play them as much as I'll let them. So we set a daily amount of time during the digital detox. They didn't play at all. I'm so proud of 40 days of no playing. There might have been one instance of like 15. They were looking forward, if nothing else, to seeing the video games come back into their life. And we will reintroduce it slowly. But usually I'll give them a 30-minute window. So it's like, hey, have you done your homework? Have you been outside today? Great. Okay, you can take 30 minutes now and play your video game, or maybe we'll do a family video game time where it's like, hey, let's all play a group game that we can enjoy together. And that way it's at least a little engagement with the whole family.
We have a family iPad, so it's the only device that my kids can use, really. And then there's an old iPhone that we use for like audiobooks that they can listen to. But the family iPad is like, it gets passed around, so it's like, hey, you get 15 minutes, you get 15 minutes. and it's not even connected to anything. So it's like, there's a couple random games on it, and then they have to just do educational stuff with it mostly, but we kind of share that in a time way as well. Or we play a game all together or something.
Well, and something I know your kids are great at is just using their imagination and being creative. So that's one of the...
That's fun.
That's one of the things behind setting a limit is, if you use up all of your free time watching movies and TV, then you're going to miss out on opportunities to just allow God to, work in your creative mind that he's given you, and come up with new fun things that can engage the world and transform the people around you. Like all of that only happens given time and space.
Yeah.
And if you never have that time or space, you're going to miss out on being a creative person that God's made you to be. So.
And we're always looking for more time to do things better or, more efficiently. And it's like, look at all the time we ate up watching something or playing these games or spending time on our phone. So it's there. It's just we have to be better managers of our time.
Yeah. And similarly, another one we had was just limiting the number of full-length movies. Yeah. And you get to pick what that number is for you and your family, for you and your community. And I think there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, guys, let's all watch a movie together, grab some popcorn, and then maybe talk about whatever that was, either during or after the movie. Yeah. But it's good to at least up front think through, like, did we already watch a couple of movies this week? Maybe that's not the best way we can, hang out together. We can find another way.
What I noticed, the 2 movies I did watch during this, when I hopped on, I have a smart TV, Apple TV, whatever, and I'm looking through the apps for this movie that I wanted to watch. I was like, there's really not that many great things out there. Like, I'm not missing out. And if I'm just here because I want to watch something, and I'm gonna find something, and my standards start to lower of like what I want to watch. Yeah. But when I wait for it, and I'm like, no, this one I'm waiting for. I really want to see this, and it's like the quality is better. And instead of me just saying, oh well, I got nothing to do, so I'm going to watch something, and you start scrolling to find something.
Yeah, when you set that limit, you have a little more selectivity in where you go, and the quality hopefully
I think it's
increases, and the engagement as well, which kind of takes us to the next one, which is try to only use one screen at a time.
I'm guilty of this next one.
It's take it or leave it is just a recommendation, but to try to avoid splitting attention between 2 screens, I think I see this a lot in my own family and other people where it's like the TV's on, but we're also on the phone, or got the laptop out, but also something else is in the background. It's just, if you're going to do it and you think it's worth your time and effort, then just do it. Just watch the movie or don't. But
I'm guilty of that because I don't always want to watch what my wife wants to watch. And so she's watching something and I'm like, I'm here. Like I'm working on something else. So I need to back off.
Again, these are all, again, recommendations that can be adapted, whatever, think through what makes sense for you and your people you're living life with. But just something to be aware of. It's like, hey, if this is worth my time, it's worth my time. If it's not, then maybe I'll turn it off.
Exactly.
And another one that we had on there was just to think through work texts and emails, kind of similarly to that last one. Splitting attention is something that happens when we take our devices with us everywhere we go. There's always an opportunity to just keep working. And maybe that's actual work that you're getting paid for, and you're just, looking at the work emails, looking at the work texts. It can be fine, but if you don't have an idea of how you're going to approach that, oftentimes it steals away from the relationships that you're actually
to be present with those people.
So.
That was a big emphasis of why we're doing this, is because we wanted to be present with God and the people He's put us with, in the place He's put us. So, that time at home with our kids or family or community is very, very important. And I know that that the phone can rob from those moments in the time. And so I actually, something I loved is I've never been great at email, so maybe this is a strong suit of mine, but I took all email off my phone. I haven't had work email on my phone in a while, but I actually took off my other emails as well. Yeah. And I was like, this is cool. And then when I get on my laptop, I'm very efficient. Yeah. And I'm like, boom, I checked all my email, boom, and then I moved on, because I don't like sitting on my laptop. For me, that feels more like screen time than my phone. So I'm like, I don't like this. So I'm going to get it done, and then I shut it and move on.
That was kind of my approach during the 40 days. And I do think that it's something I'll probably continue on with. Yeah. And I think especially if you've got young kids, teenagers, or even just, people, roommates that you're living with, it speaks to them when, without communicating, you're just always turning back to a device to work. And it might be for an important reason, but if you haven't set the expectation ahead of time of, hey, for the next 30 minutes or an hour, I got to do some work stuff, they won't be able to make the distinction. And they're just going to see, it seems like mom or dad or friend, neighbor is always just off doing something else and doesn't seem to care that I'm here.
And I want to keep growing in that, because I
Yeah.
think that is an area that's always difficult because our phones are with us all the time.
Yeah.
I know on Sabbath for us, like that's the best day where I kind of shut it off, or I put it away, and I don't entertain it. And I have put that out to my, people here at work, and people know that I'm just not available. So, that's helpful. But
setting up ahead of time, that communication is
but I don't have that in place during the week always. So that's where I feel like I can grow and get better in the evenings, kind of.
I think we all can. I think, if nothing else, this is a chance just again to relook at what do we want to incorporate in our lives? How do we want to keep growing in holiness?
Yeah.
How can we take steps to better connect with the people around us and with God? So that's one way. One thing we talked about during the 40 days, and that I'm really hoping people will continue on into just normal life, is maybe putting their phone away before bed. And so
I like that one.
We've got an option there to say how long maybe that time should be. I think for me, I like the 2-hour window of saying, before I go to sleep, the 2 hours before bed, my phone's going to be off or in another room charging. I'm not going to check it, because I don't want it to dictate what the last thing is going on in my mind. And I'd much rather that be either conversations with my wife, or, time in prayer, or just reading God's word. And so that's something that I think we could all have a version of, whether that's 2 hours or even the last 15 minutes, whatever it can be for you. I think that can be helpful. I don't know if you have something like that.
Yeah, I try to stay off it before bed. I want to be better about it in the morning as well. I think because sometimes it's like, oh, there it is, and I can get started on whatever, right away. And it's like, I don't want that to start my day either. So I think starting and closing our day is really important to have some rules. And what I've noticed in the evening is it actually keeps me closer to a bedtime, which, as an adult, I have full control of my bedtime. And yet I don't sometimes. I just let it go and go and go. So it's like, that would be really helpful. Say, hey, by 8:00, I'm off my device so that I can go to bed by 10 or something, like that would actually probably put a healthier rhythm to our lives.
I do think general. I probably slept earlier and better during the 40 days without that, throwing on a movie late at night and then staying awake because it's on. And so I think we can all probably think through what that
healthier
might look for us.
Sleep rhythms.
But I love what you said, kind of those bookends of the day, the beginning and the end.
It's huge.
If we can spend even just moments with God before we get into the hustle and bustle of whatever's going on, I think we'll be in a better heart space, mind space to actually encounter whatever the day holds. And so if we kind of give the end of the day to God and say, hey, I'm going to rest now. I trust you, be with me as I sleep. And then to wake up and say, God, it's a new day. What do you want for me today?
My wife's really good at the morning one. I'm better at the evening one, so we kind of play off each other. But what's helped me a lot is I always carry around these little notebooks. But I love to close my day with kind of writing about the day, and it could be just recounting the day or being thankful or whatever. But it gives me something tangible to do, and it's obviously it's hard copy. It's not digitally. I'm not making a vlog or writing emails, and I physically write, and so I do that on purpose because it slows me down, and it's like a landing for me at the end of the day where I'm off my device. I'm usually sitting there and just kind of write through the day, or prayers or Thanksgivings or whatever that I saw. And that helps me land the day and kind of prepare for the next one as well, because then I flip to my planner, which is also physical. I don't have a digital calendar, and it makes me look forward to it. Okay, so this is what the next day holds, and I can kind of close my eyes and pray and just kind of go get ready for bed, and like that's something I found that's aided me a lot in the landing of the day, the closing of the day, is just, being off my device, but having something else to kind of focus on or read or write. And that's been really helpful to keep a good, healthy rhythm in the evening.
I know you at different times have been really good at encouraging, keeping track of just those gratitude moments in our lives. And so I think, if you use the end of the day to just look back and say, what can I be thankful for? Even if it was a really hard day, you can find something in there to say, God, you were good and you showed up in these ways. And it just keeps that at the forefront of your mind. And also, if you're feeling weighed down by, worry or whatever it is, to be able to write that down, say, God, these are the cares I have. I'm casting them before you. You know, all these burdens, I'm handing them over to you.
Yep. My kids are going to love these someday.
Yeah. One day they'll have a great record.
Little volumes.
All the ups and downs of Noah's life. I love that.
Yeah, it is a very helpful way to kind of close the day.
Yeah, very cool. The next one is more maybe a social etiquette thing that I think we could retrain ourselves a little bit. But it's a recommendation to not have your phone with you while you're eating or while you're in a conversation with somebody.
Yeah, just going out to coffee with somebody.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Instead of, having the phone in the pocket or on the table, maybe keep it in your bag.
It's just respectful.
Yeah.
Maybe that's old school of me, but I'm like,
in some ways it is maybe a relic of the past to say, like, when we're talking, we should have each other's attention. But I do think it's something, if we don't help young people especially have this modeled to them, they're going to, and they already have in many situations, they're going to grow up thinking that it's totally normal to be with somebody, but also totally not with them at the same time, to be checking your texts and your, other things.
I just had a flashback to back in the day when newspapers were around. The dad in the morning, like breakfast, he's got the newspaper and he's sitting back and the kids are all eating, or maybe they're trying to talk to dad, but he's like in the newspaper. Yeah. And what a better physical representation of, like, I'm literally got a barrier here of paper. Like, don't talk to me. And everyone's trying to
and maybe
interact.
Proof that it's not all just the digital devices themselves. It's just
you can do it with a book.
Principle behind it, which is be present with the person that you're with,
exactly,
and show them the honor and respect of saying, you're an
here.
Image of God that is important and valuable, and I'm going to listen well, and I'm going to engage in this conversation. And if I need to step away to make, I'll do that, but I'll say, excuse me, I actually have to go make a phone call right now, or I need to respond to a text message. But if you don't have your phone on you, you're not as tempted to do it. So I've found, especially at the dinner table or the meal time, it's like, hey, even if you're by yourself, just enjoy that food and be there, and don't try to multitask everything and try to hyper produce,
the most
efficiency.
Efficient human ever. You really aren't that much more efficient anyways.
No,
at the end of the day.
In the long run, I think it's probably more detrimental to just your overall
what
well-being.
A gift in our society, what a gift to just be present with somebody and to listen and to be a good listener. And I know some of the best, I guess I'll just say, people that I get to sit down and talk with sometimes are the ones that are like engaged, listening, responding, asking questions, just good conversationalists, really. But you can't be if you're distracted and on two different things.
It's a lost art in many ways, and I think we have to take some steps that are intentional to maybe break out of that mold that we've kind of found ourselves conformed into.
Our minds have been trained in the wrong way, so we are constantly thinking of things. So even when I want to be present with you and talk to you, it's like my brain is still going on all these other things I should be doing, and it's like, what a good way to train the formation that I have had, that it's been bad, to reform these things in a better way. We
want to recalibrate a little bit and maybe live at a different pace, a little bit slower,
for sure,
a little bit more just aware of our surroundings, and see how that works. And so kind of along with that, as far as our phones and devices go, as we re-enter the normal rhythm of life out of our 40-day digital detox season, if you were somebody who dumbed down your phone during the 40 days, which I thought was a really effective way for me to spend less time on my device, now it's time to think about, how am I going to use this as a tool? Are there things I'm going to add back? And if I'm going to add them back, why? How is it going to benefit me in my life in the direction I want to grow? And if there was something I took off that was a blessing to not have, can I just keep it off?
Yeah, of course. You have the right to.
Will you let me know?
Yes.
You mentioned email as one thing that you took off. For me, that was probably the biggest one that I had on my phone prior, took it off, and I found that was really freeing. Cool. And so I do think there's a way for me to do life without the email on my phone, and I'm going to try that out for a while in the long term and see how it goes.
I experimented even further this time because I've tried to keep my phone pretty light in that regard with apps, but I took off the browsers.
Oh.
So took off the web browsers. That was a game changer.
Yeah.
And that was wild because I didn't realize how much I was just using them,
Yeah.
the browsers, for all just to look up stuff
All
or
the time.
shopping
Yeah.
or whatever. And it was like, that was hard. And they snuck back on. But for a couple of weeks and during this, I was like, I tried to keep the browsers off, and that was hard.
Yeah.
That was really hard.
In this internet filled world, it's
Oh, yeah.
really interesting when you do disconnect in a way that you just don't even have the
Right.
access in the moment. It's like a whole new world of
And-
trying to figure things out. And
Well, the confirmation, like you get confirmations like, oh, it's sent to your email, so you need to go confirm it. I'm like, shoot, I don't have email on my phone. So now I'm like looking for Wi-Fi to open up my laptop, and I'm like, I'm going back in time.
yeah.
Like, and one of my rules in life is to try to make life simpler, not more complicated.
Mhm.
So there's some things that on a phone is just simpler,
Yeah.
and I want to engage in that and make it work because it's just makes my life simpler. I don't want to make it more complicated.
Yeah.
And I was very tempted to go get a flip phone during this season.
Yeah.
One of the guys here did, and I love it. I love it that he did it.
Yeah.
And I was kept contemplating. I'm like, it's not going to make my life simpler. It's really going to technically make it harder.
Yeah.
Like-
And I think that's a good place to just say, throughout this whole thing, I said it many times, the goal was not to vilify phones or
right.
technology
Yeah.
or digital stuff or any of that.
Yeah.
It's just, can we be more thoughtful? Can we
Mhm.
really process, and so if there's something that has been good and is, it's not detrimental to your
Right.
relationship with God or with others, like, then do it.
Yeah.
It's fine. It can be a tool. And I think
Yeah.
that's one thing that we have to continually go back and revisit is,
Yeah.
is this helping me or hurting me? Is
Yeah.
this drawing me closer to God or pushing me away from God? And so, if having the internet browser is okay, then that's okay.
That's
And I
okay,
think
yeah.
each person's going to have their
Of course.
version of what that looks
Yeah.
like for them. Kind of getting close to the end of our recommendations for customizing a digital
Yeah.
rule is to try to have a day or time where you're just completely device free, especially
Yeah.
phone free, but device free altogether would be even better.
Yeah.
For
I
you,
alluded to
that's
that, yeah.
Sabbath, right?
Mhm.
I think this was one of our practices, was to try this out for 24 hours. And I would say, even though I maybe outside of the 40 days don't always hold strictly to a 24-hour no
Yeah.
device altogether,
Right.
I do try to find large chunks of time where my phone is just gone, it's off.
It's so good.
And in general, I'm not, going to a screen for entertainment
Yeah.
or whatever. And I'm just trying to do life with my family, with my community, and with God, and have moments
Yeah.
to be with them. So
Just doing life without it is so good. I think that maybe that's one of the reasons why I love running, like in the mountains. It's
Mhm.
like I'm not available. Like my phone is not
Yeah.
important. I'm just running, and my brain is free. And so, for ours, I've alluded to it already. Sabbath is kind of our 24-hour period where we try to do life differently.
Yeah.
And I call it, well, someone else has said it, but like this is like an act of resistance
Yeah.
to our culture, right? Of like, I'm not going to do the way
Yeah.
you want me to do this today. I'm going to slow down and stop and rest and delight and worship in God.
yeah.
And so part of that for me is unplugging. And so we try to eliminate that as much as possible.
Yeah. So maybe for some people that is a 24 hours
Yeah.
where they're just
It's
shutting
possible.
everything down.
You can do it.
It is.
I encourage
It's
you.
a high bar, but I really would say, like, as an act of resistance, as a countercultural
Yeah.
witness to the world,
Yeah.
to just say, hey, we think life can and should be different sometimes, and we're going to make a real choice to do things a different way.
Yeah.
And so with that, some people, maybe 24 hours is too much. Maybe they're
Mhm.
going to do an 8-hour chunk. Maybe it's going to be a couple hours a week, whatever it is. I would just say at least create a window somewhere
Yeah.
where it's just everything's off.
It's free.
And you're with yourself, you're with God, you're with the people he's put you around.
Mhm.
But as you said, we want to say no to the work and the worry and
Mhm.
all the wanting that comes along
Yeah.
with our devices. And we want to say yes to the times of worship and rest and
Yeah.
delight.
Mhm.
And so if your device is contributing to those good things,
Sure.
awesome. But
Yeah.
if it's not, if it's pushing you towards those other things, put it away for a little while.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think through that in a healthy way for myself because I think I could have excuses where I'm like, oh, this phone is helpful. Like I love my phone for the camera.
Mm.
And so I often just have my phone because I want to be able to take a picture or, and
Yeah.
I love that. But I'm like, what are the ways I could just find, I mean, I have a camera like I could just bring my camera. I'm like, yeah, but it's heavy. The phone's small.
Yeah.
I'm starting to like think through all these little things because I know myself, and I will be so easily just tempted now that I have my phone. I'm like, oh, well, I could check this and check this. So I think it's still important discipline to just let it go sometimes.
I think you're right. I think camera is a really cool tool, and I think maybe we'll look back in years to come and say, wow, look at this great catalog of life and memories and all. But I also think sometimes we're so distracted by getting the thing that we're not actually present. I was at my kid's last soccer game this weekend, and I hadn't taken any videos of him the whole time. I was like, okay, I'm going to get some videos, maybe get him scoring a goal. But what I found was it was really frustrating because I was looking at the phone,
just focused on it.
Yeah, and watching him on the field through the phone rather than just getting to enjoy him play and be present and cheer him on. And so I did get the video. He did score the goal. But in the long run, I don't want that to be an all the time thing because then I'm just going to miss out on so many little moments where because I was looking at it through a lens of my phone, I didn't get to actually engage with what was going on.
It's probably tied into the FOMO, the fear of missing out, like your fear of missing that moment in a capture it kind of way. But I adopted, I call it JOMO, but it's the joy of missing out. And I'm trying to like enjoy missing out on those types of things more because I want to be more present. So like with what's going on. So I don't know if that helps anybody, but for me, it's like my way of thinking about it.
I like the reframe there. Well, everybody hopefully will be able to have their own version of what this looks like. And depending on people's seasons of life, you know, my recommendation would be, hey, maybe create one of these for yourself personally, individually, and then take it the next step and talk about it with a community, whether that's your immediate family or you and your roommate or you and your Calvary community. Take it one step beyond just you and say, hey, as a group now,
let's build this.
How can we kind of keep each other accountable and frame what we think is a healthy version of how we can live out this relationship with our digital devices. So I think awesome. There's a chance for you to maybe have yours a little bit different. You know, I know in my family, I tend to be the most strict when it comes to device use just because I want to be and I find it helpful for me. So there's kind of my micro version of a digital rule that applies to me, and then there's one for my family, and it's like, hey, guys, cool. as a family, this is how we're going to do things. And then hopefully we can take it one step beyond that and, you know, bring in other families and say, hey, now collectively, what do we think is appropriate? How are we going to do this together?
I think it's great. I love it. I know we do it as a family, and I'd like to broaden that into like our community group as well of how we do stuff. Yeah,
I think the benefit to that maybe is that, you know, when you bring in other people and other groups, there's another angle to look at things from, and so maybe they're going to see something that you weren't aware of. Maybe they're going to poke some buttons that you were trying to to keep your hands off of, and you know, we all have different things that we let slide and that we're a little more strict about, and so having a more well-rounded vision of a digital rule could be helpful. So it's something to consider. You know, it takes some vulnerability to open yourself up to that sort of.
It might have been you or someone on our team, because someone brought up like audiobooks, and I'm kind of addicted to audiobooks. I listen to a lot when I'm running or just listen in the car. And so someone brought up like, well, that's technology, like, you know, and I was like, oh, but is it like, like someone reading to me? Is that a bad thing? Like, so I had to wade through that. And it was someone else bringing that up and me saying, oh yeah, you're right. Like maybe I need to just chill off the audiobooks for a little bit, and because I wouldn't have thought it. I wouldn't have put it in the same category. I'm like, well, this is good. I'm learning, right? Like,
I like that.
So that's helpful.
Well, speaking of books, we did have on the back of our little pamphlet that Jessica created for us is some recommended reading, some books that you and I and others have either read or found helpful as you kind of think through these topics. Some of them are more targeted towards, you know, how do you have a well-rounded life where you're growing in holiness and just in all areas? Because we did this specifically digital detox. But essentially, you could take this concept and apply it to every
so many things
area of your life and try to grow and try to get rid of the things that aren't helpful and cling to the things that are. And some of these are more specific to just information and studies that have been done that talk about what is this technology, what are these devices doing to us at a mental level, at a physical level.
The culture is not going to promote a lot of that. And so I think it's important for us to take some initiative and learn about what is happening, And so I read The Anxious Generation. That was very informational, and scary in some ways, of just how these devices are forming us, And so I would recommend that one. I know we read Irresistible many years ago, and that was great book as well.
I think similar. That in many ways started a lot of these thoughts. It was like, wow, I really should process. How am I being intentional with this thing that is very formative in my life? And that's where, I think each person could maybe find one or two books here that are worth a read if you haven't read them. And that will maybe continue the learning and the growing and a trajectory that points in a good, healthy direction.
I think it's encouraging too. I mean, I know when I'm trying to eat healthy, I'll watch more food documentaries because it keeps me accountable. And I'm like, yep, that's why I don't want to eat that. Or so I think too, it just encourages you to keep going and know there's other people out there that are trying to do this too, and they want to support you. Like you said, your community, your family, bring those people into it, because we all just do better together. In that way.
Yeah. And that being said, this probably won't be the only time we do this as a church family.
Right.
But at the same time, if you came in, halfway through or at the tail end of this and you're like, oh man, I missed out, 40 days is over. This could be done at any point in the year.
Check it out.
Get a group of people around you and say, hey, be intentional with me for the next however many days. Maybe you do a 2-week one, maybe you do a 6-month one, get, crazy and just see what it could look like. But it's not something that can only be done in this particular way at this particular time.
Right.
I think, as we've shown, hopefully, that these are all principles that can be applied in somebody's whole life, moving forward. So.
And this podcast is a resource you could go back to and kind of hit on repeat some of the weekly challenges, prayers and practices. So
each week highlights. I think each week we had a different scripture to go along with it. So just taking some of that framework and maybe working that through with somebody else could be a great tool. And hopefully this podcast has been helpful to people. Noah, thank you for joining me on a student ministry podcast for a long time. Pastor Parker got to be a part of the first couple, and then he's been really busy with middle school, high school ministry and all the great things happening there. So thank you for joining me as we've thought through this in the context of Calvary Boise. What does it look like? And I'm excited that we were able to do this. I did hear some great stories as we were going through about ways God was using it in people's lives, and I can't wait to hear more stories. I know some of them will be super exciting, and some of them will be like, that was the hardest 40 days of our lives, but we did it, right? We took a period of time to say, we're going to do this. There is another way. And maybe that's one final encouragement for people, especially if you've got kids, students, is, you get to set the tone for what is possible for the next generation. And so if nothing else, whether that's daily, weekly, or over a course of 40 days, show them there's another way to do life. And God is so good and so gracious. And I think we will take our digital rules and we'll review them on a regular basis. And we'll see how we can keep growing in holiness, right? That's our prayer. That's our prayer for you guys, that you'll have sustained rhythms, not just a flash in the pan, but something that you can take for the long haul and just continue to grow with your relationships.
And I know as a family, we're going to be going through this, and I like to have little check-ins, so kind of give myself a goal, but like, hey, by the end of the summer, let's check back in again on this. So that's helpful for me, at least, to have a time to say, okay, let's how did we do these last 40 days? And then how do we want to move forward? And then let's check back in the fall and see where we're at, So give yourself little checkpoints. I think that's helpful to have bite-sized time frame.
No, that's great. Maybe we'll do another one of these as a check-in as we wrap up the summer or something.
I'm down.
In the meantime, do well as you engage with your digital devices, technology. Enjoy the creativity, the relationships, the imagination God's given you. And have fun, live life,
being present with God and
present.
the people he's put in your front of you. So, Yeah.
And thank you guys for joining us for this 40 days. It's been a blast. So glad that we got to have this opportunity.
Yeah.
And we'll see you soon.
God bless.